Hi everyone. Our video today describes our cruise north through the Leeward Islands from Antigua to the BVI's and back south to Guadeloupe.
We visited Barbuda and French St Martin on the way north and Dutch St Martin on the way south.
Enjoy!
Zen again arrived in English harbour Antigua just after New Year 2022, and after we spent a few days recovering from our transatlantic passage and restocking the boat, we then made our way west into Falmouth and spent a few days there, and then we continued our trip up the west coast of Antigua, stopping near Jolly Harbour and then a bit further up near Deep Harbour. One day we took the bus into the capital, St John's. It's quite a nice, lively town, bit of a cruise ship industry there, but some lovely old buildings, including a really interesting cathedral with a wooden interior. Like many Caribbean islands, Antigua has several old forts, and here we're climbing Fort Barrington, which, as you can see, has some wonderful views at the top. And while we were there, we met an Aussie boats, Kynic.
The passage from Antigua to Barbuda was a reach with an easterly wind and a westerly current. We had to head up because of the current, and so it's a close reach all the way across.
The quieter anchorages and white sandy beaches of Barbuda were a very welcome break from the busyness of Antigua, and we spent just under a week there.
Barbuda to French St Martin was an overnight passage in good weather conditions, only a little cloud. We jibed twice before reaching the island and then jibed down the channel to Marigot Bay.
St Martin has a French side and a Dutch side, and this time we anchored on the French side in Marigot Bay. However, you can also go into the lagoon there, which is a bit quieter, from the Dutch side in Simpson Bay and on the French side into Marigot Bay. One day we walked up to Grand Casse with Sea Life and Revision 2. Grand Casse is a lovely little seaside town just on the northwest end of St Martin. On another day, we took the bus into Philipsburg, which is a fun little place that's well geared up for the cruise ship industry, with lots of shopping and some great bars. We really enjoyed catching up with the Aussie mates in St Martin, and also enjoying some delicious patisseries in the French side, visiting lagoonies, and of course visiting the world famous Maho Beach, where you can watch the planes land right next to the beach.
St Martin to Road Town in the BVI's was another overnight passage in good weather conditions.
After clearing in Road Town Tortola, we headed straight south for Norman Island, where we spent a few days in a few different anchorages. We went from Norman Island east to Peter Island, where we anchored on the south side of the island for a few days. It was a little bit rolly, but we'd been told that there was really good snorkeling on this side. However, when we went in to have a look ourselves, it wasn't all that great, and we think this was probably due to the hurricane from a few years ago that had damaged the reef. Having been there before in 2016, we had to revisit the Cooper Island Beach Club, and in particular their awesome solar-powered brewery, where we enjoyed some beautiful craft beers. As we couldn't anchor in Bluff Bay, we headed around to a mooring just outside the Scrub Island Marina, where we topped up our tanks with water and took some long overdue showers. Jos Van Dyke was one of the highlights of our trip around the British Virgin Islands, in particular the Bubbly Pool, which is a gap in the rocks where the Atlantic swell comes through and creates like a natural spa effect. We'd originally planned to head north to the Bahamas in order to get our US B1, B2 visas to go to the US for hurricane season. However, the waiting list to get interviews for these visas was so long, it became clear that we just weren't going to make it this time. So we realised it was time to head east and south towards Grenada so we could sit out the hurricane season there.
From Soper's Hole at West End, we had a great sail along the top of the BVIs and around Antigua, and from there it was a motor sail into a bit of a chop to St Martin, where we anchored in Simpsons Bay.
During our second visit to St Martin, we stayed on the Dutch side and we went through the bridge into the lagoon, which was very well protected, and after a couple of attempts we got the anchor to stick. We had a lot of fun showing our New Zealand cruising buddies from Cerulean the sights of St Martin, including a lunch at Grand Casse and a trip to Phillipsburg.
St Martin to Guadeloupe was another overnighter with quite a bit of motor sailing.
When we arrived in Dayhay, Guadeloupe, we ended up taking a mooring ball because the holding wasn't so great in the anchorage, and we spent a few days just exploring the very pretty town of Dayhay, which many people know is the site of the TV series Death in Paradise. The west coast of Guadeloupe is volcanic, so the beaches are quite well known for their black sand. Many of the anchorages on the western side of Guadeloupe have a lot of seagrass, which attracts the turtles because they feed on it. So we got to see so many turtles just swimming off the boat. The Botanic Gardens at Dayhay is a must visit for anybody who likes nature and plants and flowers. It was just absolutely jam-packed with the most beautiful displays of tropical plants from all over the world, including Australia. Guadeloupe has many wonderful rum distilleries, and this is just one of them that we visited at St. Ros. We spent one day at the capital of Guadeloupe, Pointe-à-Pitre, which was a pretty run-down town actually, not a great deal to see other than the market there, but it had a kind of faded beauty to it and some interesting street art. So we anchored in Bouillon, where the holding again wasn't all that great, but eventually we managed to get the anchor to hold, and then we spent some time exploring the town and some of the wonderful locations such as the Coffee Museum in the south of E014, and later we then headed north up to Pointe Noire to the Chocolate Museum. Beautiful restaurant Eddie's Papillon in Bouillon was a real find, and we enjoyed several delicious meals there.
Our passage down to Les Saints was unusual. We were accompanying Cerulean, which had no working engine. There was quite a bit of current around the southern point, and we were both becalmed for periods, but once we got past the Cape, we had a fantastic sail, as you can see from this lee grid.
Les Saints was to be our last stop in Guadeloupe. It's a very popular tourist destination, particularly with French tourists, but we managed to escape the worst of the crowds and enjoyed some lovely hikes, getting ready for our big hikes in Dominica, which is coming up in our next video. We did several hikes around Les Saints while we were there, including one to the rather rugged southern end of the island, where we noticed a little airstrip that was surrounded in hills, which would be quite interesting for any pilots trying to take off and land there. We hope you enjoyed the video.
Our next video will describe our cruise through the Windward Islands from Dominica to Grenada.
Thanks for watching.
See ya.